Okay, chart of the moment for recording video 1 of our first journal tour. So this is going to be like a breeze through of this journal, as well as how I originally filled it out, why it's my favorite, and then an overview of if there's going to be more detailed videos out of this journal. Okay, so this is my very first astrology journal. I had this book for 9 years and then I filled it out in 9 months. The way I ended up first filling it out was I was taking a yoga course and I was using it for my notes, and then I hated the yoga course, so I bailed. And then I wanted to take back this lovely book from that negative experience. And I had realized in that experience that I don't want to be studying yoga. I don't want to be studying anything but astrology. So I started taking my notes in here and I would just open up to a page and start writing. Open up to a page and start writing. So that made it a lot of fun and very wizardy. Do you know what I mean? To just open up randomly to a big nice book instead of being meticulous. And then when it was all filled, and I would take notes and be like, well, I've got, some pages over here free and a page over here free. And I had one page in the very beginning in between some yoga notes that I used as a summary for a course I ended up taking. So it's all peppered throughout. But what I did when I was done and it was full is I went through and I numbered all of my, every second page. I just went through and numbered all of them. Can't even see on this camera. And then I had a piece of paper and I wrote down what was what. And then that let me afterwards create a table of contents that I could then color code. So everything that's from Kelly Surtees ended up being in pink. And then if I was reading books from the library, they were green. Random stuff like Horary is orange. Demetra George is blue. And then all of the astrology podcast episodes ended up being kind of black in here. So anyway, this was my favorite book because not only is it filled out in kind of a fun, random, I don't know, whimsical way, but also the table of contents is the nicest because I waited until the very end to create it. In all the other journals that I have, I've been attempting to create a table of contents as I go because, yeah, I was using those books more often and I wanted to find different stuff in it. But that means that the table of contents are really messy and they're not organized and they're not color coded, even though I tried. So yeah, big recommend on completely filling it out and then taking a separate rough draft of what's in it and then being able to do a very organized table of contents. So that's why this one is my favorite. Also, these books have a clasp that goes over and kind of locks the book, and it sits on the back of the book. So this book, every time I opened it, the clasp would sit, and then it got too much pressure and it would break off. So I learned in the other books that have the clasp to put them the other way so that the clasp just floats off to my other side and I can better all the weight of the book isn't on it. So I also know that this is my first journal because I just feel that oh, there's no clasps here, must be journal 1. And then I wrote down on the edge of the paper number 1, September 2022 to May 2023. And yeah, let's do a tour. So we have some yoga pages, yoga, my summary page from A Course with Kelly Surtees, yoga, more Kelly Surtees, Chaldean order. This is my first notes on the Chaldean star, and then I ended up making one of my own. The idea of collection of light, modality, triplicity, quadruplicity, the Mercury-Venus diagram, which I absolutely had no idea what this diagram meant when I wrote it down, but I wrote it down. Trying to figure out morning stars and speed, the different synodic cycles of the planets, Demetra George lecture and notes on that, little gap for yoga stuff, random thing about a single planet, yoga stuff, cut out a page here, have no idea what was on this. Alice Sparkly Cat, Rob Hand, library notes, copying it out like every last thing from the book before I got tired. Midpoints have come up so many times in my studies and I still don't even really use them. Some ideas about quadrants and having different like introversion, extroversion kind of qualities based on quadrants and hemispheres. Applying and separating aspects, and then applying it to some of my friends' charts. Learning about electional astrology, so episode 190, this is when I first begin to create better notes about my notes, better, paths of sources and where did I get it from and when did I make the note? When is this entry? Some of the notes from the course I took with Kelly. Yoga stuff. One of the first times that I listed out my chart, so I listed it by like just the way the chart goes, so everything in my first house, everything in my second house, everything in my third house, and then the first time that I listed everything out by kind of absolute degree. So what's the earliest degree anything in the chart, and then just list it in degree order. This is how I learned aspects, by tracking transits and realizing that things of the same degree are going to show up together repeatedly all the time. That is what an aspect does. It ties them together with a certain kind of flavor. Horary notes, and I believe what I did here is I tried to apply this like degree notion and say that, okay, if I've got like a 3-degree something here, then that's going to be this 3-degree and that 3-degree, and these guys can see it and those guys can see it. And so I just did that for all of my placements, and yes, this is why anything anywhere can transit anything anytime, and like life is just always happening, right? Because it's like there are no dead spots in the chart. Learning about traditional planets and like first looking at qualities. This is one of the times that I wrote it down without knowing what I was writing down, and now I understand the qualities and lean on them a lot more. But it comes from, inundating yourself in the language, learning about secondary progressions, and the moon, learning about the master of the nativity, the predominator, co-master, the astrology podcasts like general birth chart reading episodes and tips. And then peppered throughout are some sources just from online that I don't really know where they're from, learning about eclipses, looking at the difference between eclipses that are like solar, lunar, lunar, solar, looking at the pattern, looking at eclipses through my chart and my houses and what they would have lined up with, so doing like deep dives with my timing, Saturn return and doing the timing for that, and realizing that, oh, Saturn in my third house put me in school for my Saturn return. Thank you, Saturn. Learning about annual profections. This is one of the first times where I tried to look at everything all at once. So the year, I believe this is zodiacal releasing periods. Perfection, so the perfected house, the solar return ascendant, and I think if it's angular, succeedant, or cadent. I don't really know what all of this is. But I was trying to find the patterns. I was trying to see, right? Profections, solar returns, notes on critical degrees, which I don't use anymore. That's more of a modern concept, I believe. Notes on angularity and house topics. Notes from no-till on hemispheres. Cafe astrology. The first time I wrote down the essential dignities table, and I know this is Egyptian dignities because in Egyptian my Mercury is in his own bounds, but not in, or these are Ptolemaic. In Egyptian he's not, and in Ptolemaic they are. Ideas about dignity and exaltation. Figuring out my own chart. Sect. Doing deep dives on like what my planets want. Learning about zodiacal releasing, peak periods. Making a bunch of notes, trying to find the pattern. I have a different video on this that I'll link, but I had thought that if I could figure out kind of like a glyph that would represent any given period, you know those calendars that have like the month and the day and you like turn the blocks around? I was like, what if I could have a list of when my periods are changing, and then I'll have like a little glyph craft that I can like turn around based on what symbol is like coming up based on how the symbol relates to how the time is, and then I could have like a little calendar. So I have a separate video on that, but that didn't work out because zodiacal releasing is not something I can find easy patterns in, and so it's not a technique that works for me. Solar returns with Ben Dykes, primary directions, Sati Sati, the nodes. I don't even know what all of this is, but I was looking at when the nodes are aspected by the transiting nodes, I believe, and how, you know, at any given point that axis is being transited for the most part by the transiting nodes. There's only a couple places that can't be seen. And then when do my planets transit my natal nodes? So just trying to take notes on those. This is when I start taking notes from the library in this book. So Astrology in Your Past Lives by Jean Avery. Matt Aron's Psychic Witch. Doing some budgets here. There's always time for a budget. So all of this is Matt Aron's Psychic Witch. That is a dense book. Highly recommend if you're wanting lots of information on visualizations and spells, elements, planetary correspondence, how to tune in, how to do your spells, and then notes from other books. So I have The Witch's Guide to Wellness by Crystal Jordan. Taking lots of notes on that. And then I have a final note here being like same throughout, light a candle, ground and center, visualize, rhyme, gratitude. So whatever it is you're doing, that's how you do it. The Power Wish by Keiko. Raven Caldera's Moon Phase Astrology. Carolyn Miss's Sacred Contracts. Natalie Wallstein. I was having a Saturn II IC transit, and so I was finding different things about the IC. I got a couple like $7 or $8 lectures to attend. Attended a lecture with Alice Sparkley Cat, Saturn in Pisces. And then doing some reflections on that. Doing some work on inherent or like internal bias. Kepler quizzes. There's some free quizzes on the Kepler website, and just going through those quizzes a lot gave me enough to like take some notes about, again, the hemispheres and the quadrants and angularity, so that was fun. And then more notes on Saturn and Pisces, because Saturn had just come out of his houses doing his work, so he hit Pisces, which is like the spa for him, and he's so intense that his spa treatment is like just annihilate me. So I was like, with Saturn and Pisces, Saturn wants to be direct and go somewhere. Those fish chained together can only mosey along. So how do you get to where you want to go in the most direct way possible when there's one of the two just has to give up and be like, all right, carry me. You swim, I'll go along with the ride. So what parts of you, particularly what Saturnian parts of you, need to check out in order to get through Pisces, for Saturn to get through Pisces? That was my Saturn and Pisces mantra. Notes on Venus's day. What was this? This is learning about temperament with Kelly, and she has a lecture that I got. She also has a free lecture with or an episode with Patrick Watson. Temperament is one of the foundational things that like reinvigorated my practice and made, I talk about, when you're beginning astrology, you're reading your chart online, you're finding out information from the automated, delineations or chart interpretations, and you're like, wow, like at least 50% of that is bang on. And then I got into astrology because I wanted to take the time, and I knew it would take a lot of time, but I wanted to learn how to read all those symbols to see if I could find why or another way to interpret them so that 100% of the chart made sense and not just 50%. And temperament is one of the things that you learn it and then you look at your chart and then you go, oh, those things I've always said about myself, that's part of my temperament. It's not a failing, it's not something to fix, it's there. So temperament was a big deal for me to learn. Just as we learn that another Demetra George and Kelly Surtees notes, just as we learn that the signs are not just the name of the sign, and then you got to kind of take someone's word for it, that all the things they're saying Leo is what Leo is. Just as you can break that down into like, well, Leo is fixed fire ruled by the sun. That gives you enough information if you have an idea about fixed, an idea about fire, an idea about the sun, about those ideas we have about Leo without having to be really cliche about it. So just how you can learn more about the signs by getting into like what the signs are made out of, you learn more about the planets by getting into temperament, by getting into temperamental qualities. So anyway, big old deal, big recommend. And then I'll probably make a different video about this, but Kelly Surtees has a video about applying and separating aspects, and I just drew it, I guess. I drew little comics for it. So we'll see if we can make that its own thing, separating and applying aspects. More notes from the course that I took with her. I was running out of pages in like the big chunk of book that I had it in, and so some of it comes to the back and some of it goes to the front. Temperament, this is the YouTube video with Patrick Watson. It's just some supplementary info. Then I found Ferdaria, again from Kelly Surtees. This was one of the last things in this book of May 2023. So I had tried and tried and tried zodiacal releasing, could not make it work for me, could not find really unambiguous, easy to spot patterns. I did like a session journaling about Ferdaria. Yep, 100%. So I haven't looked at it again since getting into this to see how things like maybe repeating or shifted. But that was lots of fun learning that technique. I had tried it before and I was doing it wrong, so I found a video explaining it, and yeah, I was able to make it work. And then the very last page here was just some ideas I had about fixed stars. So I had some of the major stars here because we learned about fixed stars with the Kelly Surtees course that I took. And then I was trying to write down the stars that had like kind of a wide orb to my planets, and then the stars that had a tighter orb to all of my placements. And then in my second progressions, what stars my angles would have progressed through, or which stars would have progressed to my angles. But like that doesn't happen. They move way too slowly, especially in progression. So like ignore that part. That didn't happen. All the times that progressed moon went over a star. And I did not see big patterns with the fixed stars either. But I ended up doing a separate study of that, and yeah, didn't find a lot. So yeah, that is my first journal that took 9 months to fill, and saw me get into finding teachers and sources and being able to get deeper into my chart, all the way into putting in lecture notes and like paid coursework notes into this book. So yeah, there we go. Overview. Tour Tour 1 of the journal. Okay, that's it, team. That is the end of our tour for Journal 1. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you would like to support me, I would like to accept your support. You can send any kind of business or topic inquiry, or if you would like to reach out for a reading, to the email here. Also, I am gratefully accepting tips and donations at any of the links on this page, and I do have readings available and some Bibles at my Buy Me a Coffee. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Hope to do a reading with you soon, and we'll see you next time. Bye!